Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another interview for the Florida Writers Book Expo. My name is Michael Farrell, and I am a director of the Florida Writers Association, an all-volunteer nonprofit group for all writers at all levels, where we do writing conferences, workshops, webinars, podcasts, and events like this one. Here at the Book Expo, we have 60 books across genres with some amazing authors for you to meet. I'm joined by one of those wonderful authors, Tara Lynn Masih. Tara Lynn Masih is a National Jewish Book Award finalist and winner of a Julia Ward Howe Award for her novel My Real Name is Hanna. Anthologies include the Rose Medal Pressfield Guide to Writing Flash Fiction. Where the Dog Star Never Glows is her collection of long and very short stories. So let's get started with our interview. How are you doing today, Tara?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's get started with how you got started in your writing journey.
Um, well, I think I got started the way most writers do in terms of being a reader first. Loved books. I asked for books, birthdays, Christmases, avid reader. At one point, the children's book librarian took my mother aside and said that your daughter not only has read every book in this children's book library once, but twice. So I think it's time to send her up to the adult section. So I think I was about 12 at that time. And to my mother's credit, she allowed it, although she previewed every book I checked out. But that was kind of a special feeling to go upstairs to the adult section and be the only, adolescent up there checking out the books. And it allowed me to sort of read up and expand my horizons. So reading was definitely, a way that I began the journey. And then I think, as with many writers, the desire to then someday create your own and write your own books and have your own, see your name on the cover, was something that, got me going.
Awesome. So speaking of what got you going, what inspired your most popular book?
Um, well, my most popular book now is the novel. It's the My Real Name is Hanna novel. And I had seen a documentary titled No Place on Earth, and it was about a family in Ukraine that hid in underground caves and evaded the Nazis during World War II. Ukraine has a huge underground cave system. It's like miles long. And this particular family, the Sturmer family, and others, a couple of other families, survived. Most of them survived over 500 days living underground in two caves. And it was just a very inspiring story. And when we were done, I was watching it with my 16-year-old son, and he stayed behind to discuss it with us. And that sort of got me thinking that if I could keep my 16, if we could keep my 16-year-old son um, down with us and discussing it. Obviously, it had a big impact on him, and then I thought I'd really like to bring this story to young adult readers, although
Awesome.
mostly adults have been reading it.
Right. So, what do you find to be? So originally you mentioned that like you enjoy hearing your son talk about it. What do you besides that? What do you find to be the most exciting part of being an author?
Um, I'm not sure being an author is all that exciting. It's a lot of work.
True.
At times, very stressful. Emotionally, dealing with rejection can be tough. Getting published. But if I had to be excited, if I could say there's something that would excite me, it is, and I haven't been able to do it much during COVID, but at least virtually we've been able to do it, is to be able to discuss books and writing. Going out and doing readings is, I really miss that the live interaction with people who come to the store, and hopefully most of them have read the book and are there because they love the book and they want to ask questions about it. That to me is, or if I get an email from someone or I'm on social media, that connection with the reader is the most exciting thing to me. And I'm a literary writer, so it doesn't happen all that much, but when it does, it's very special.
Awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned writing being a lot of work. What would you say was the biggest challenge that you've come across?
Um, the biggest challenge for me is self-promotion. I am it's very hard for me to do self-promotion. I'm very more comfortable when I'm invited to do it, but to sort of do it on my own, especially through social media, that's very hard for me to do it. And I envy the old days when people could be, because most writers are introverted and who could just stay in their rooms and write, and then the publishers and the marketing and sales reps would take care of the rest. Those days are long gone, obviously, and I have definitely gotten more comfortable with it as I am here, speaking with you. But it took a long time to get to this point, 35 years to be able to get up and be comfortable speaking in front of an audience.
Right. I guess speaking of social media, where can we find you there?
Um, I'm on most of the social media platforms except for Twitter. I took a sort of a political stand against Twitter early on. I know that a lot of writers, that's one of their favorite platforms, but my favorite platform is actually Goodreads. That's where I'm most comfortable because I'm dealing with people who love books, and that's it. There's no other agenda there. So that's more where I spend my time, with social media. But I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. People can follow me on Amazon Central. Those are the main ones that I'm on. And I do have a website.
So we actually have a question from the audience. Are all your young adult books true stories?
Say that again. Are all my books? What was the?
All your young adult books, are they all true stories?
I only have the one young adult book, and it is inspired by a true story. It's fictional. I did not want to steal the Sturmer story because I thought that it's possible one of their descendants might want to write more about it. So mine's inspired. I have a fictional family, but everything in the book that happens, if it didn't happen to the Sturmer family, it happened to somebody else. So it's very factual. So yes, I would say it's not true, but it's based on truth.
Okay, and then one more question. Do you struggle with marketing your books?
Yes, as I just mentioned, I do. I've actually even taught classes on small press marketing. Most of my books have been, actually all of them have been with smaller presses or mid-list presses. So in those cases, you have to do even more marketing than you do when you've got a larger press. And I've also personally never hired. I did hire, actually, strike that. I did hire a small press publicist for my recent small book that came out, and that was also very helpful. But I've never hired someone to do the bigger books. So I've always done it myself, and I've learned the hard way, and I've tried to pass a lot of that information on as much as I can in blogs or classes. I taught a class in small press marketing, and in venues like this. And I'm happy to answer more specific questions on marketing if anybody has any, rather than just a general question.
All right. Another question we have here. What other genres do you write in? Which ones do you enjoy the most?
Um, uh, Fiction, short stories. I have to say my greatest love is writing short stories or flash fiction. I'm much more comfortable writing concise, smaller pieces. I'm sort of a failed poet. I tried poetry when I was younger and finally accepted that, I was an okay poet, but not a great one. However, the poetry definitely crept into the fiction, and I've been called lyrical, and that's definitely because of the poetry background. But I love, maybe it's, partial ADD in me or whatever, but I prefer the smaller stuff that I can finish more quickly and get some satisfaction of faster. I've only have the one novel, and it was a real struggle to write that one. It took me years to even get to that point. You can see the white hair. I mean, it's taken me a long time to be able to get to write a novel, and it's a very short novel. It's very brief. I think it's about 168 pages. So even that took me a long time. So I can't say I enjoyed writing the novel. It was a lot more work for me than writing one-page story. And I've heard the opposite from some people. Some people are much more natural writing the longer works, and then can't imagine how do you write a one-page story. So everybody has their different strengths, and mine is definitely, I think, more concise writing. But there is an addiction to writing longer work. You get more invested in your characters. You get to know them more. Sort of fall in love with them, so to speak. It was very hard for me to say goodbye to my Hanna character, and I still haven't completely let go of her. So I will be writing a novel again in the future, but I took a big break because, especially writing about the Holocaust, took its toll.
Right, I understand, and I can definitely relate to you with the writing long pieces. It definitely takes a lot out of you, and I do prefer writing short pieces, although I am currently working on a novel. So another question you have: how long have you been writing?
Probably about 40 years. About 40 years of writing, if you count the early short stories, high school publications, college publications. Starting off for many years, I just published in literary magazines. And it wasn't until 2010 that my first short story collection came out. And that was based on many decades of writing. I'm not a very prolific writer. It takes me a long time between works to come up with something new. I'm not someone who writes every day necessarily, so I've learned to be at peace with that, because there's a lot of pressure, I think, sometimes on people to follow that work ethic of writing every day, and I finally gave up. I can't do that. So I actually lost track of the question. I don't even know where I took it from there.
The question was, how long have you been writing?
Oh yes, so it's been quite a long time.
Even with because you mentioned before that writing, it does take a long time. Despite that, how many books have you written?
Technically 3 books. I've written, the first one is a story collection that came out in 2010. Then the novel came out a few years ago, and then this was different. This is a collaborative novelette that came out. The Bitter Kind came out with writer James Claffey. And what he and I did is we took characters from our story collections, and we had them meet up, but we had to provide a lot of backstory. And in his case, his character story was only like this long. Mine was a little bit longer. It came from my story collection. And that was a lot of fun to do. We collaborated back and forth. I would write one scene, send it to him, and he'd write that next scene and send it back. And it was a lot of fun to see how he would riff off of my work, and then we'd continue on. And it actually took us 8 years to write an even slimmer volume, but that just came out this fall. So those are the 3 ones. But I have published 2 other anthologies, collections. The most well-known one is the Rose Metal Press Field Guide to Writing Flash Fiction. And in that, I did a very long historical introduction on flash fiction. So even though I was editing that, there was a 30-page introduction that I had to write. And that was actually the very first book that I came out with.
All right. Awesome. So, uh, with with the time it takes to write and edit, what time of the day do you find you do your best writing?
When I was younger, it used to be like between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. I just that time of being the only one sort of awake and up, and something about the quietness of that time of night. But as I've gotten older, I can't stay up that late anymore. So I have learned to write during the day, and it's whenever I can get to it. Um, if you look back at my career, you'll also see that I began producing a lot all of a sudden. A lot of these books came out all at once, almost 1 year after the other, and that was because my son reached a certain age. I got divorced, and I was taking care of him by myself for a long time, so I didn't have much time to write. And that's another reason I did the flash fiction, because I could squeeze that in while taking care of him. So it wasn't until he reached a certain age that I was really finally had the time to devote to the intensity that is needed to publish a book.
Awesome. So, another question here from the audience: do you have a favorite author you read who inspires your writing?
Um, I'm inspired by a lot of writers. I don't think I go to one or two specifically, but in terms of contemporary writers, I would say Anthony Doerr. I pretty much eat up anything that he writes, and I really love Helen Shankman's recent short story collection. They were like family to me. Absolutely fell in love with that. But I don't really read other people to get inspired. I don't, kind of copy them or read and then want to go write. I just read because I enjoy reading. And I actually, one of my favorite all-time books is Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, which sort of surprises people when I tell them that. But that book, that if I had to say any book inspired me, it was Mark Twain and his language and his message in that book.
Awesome. That's great to hear. So, at the start of your writing journey, did you join a lot of writing groups?
No, because I was sort of the only one writing at the time. I was working in publishing, and there really weren't any writing groups per se, although I did join an organization in Boston called Grub Street Writers, and that was also very helpful. They're a wonderful organization. If you're in Massachusetts, I highly recommend them. That was a very good social connection to have, and I still have friends to this day that I met many years ago through Grub Street Writers. Certainly, Florida, this organization is, as soon as I moved to Florida, I joined it. So they've been very helpful as well.
Awesome. So, one more question from the audience: was it hard getting an agency to publish your first book and subsequent books? How did you go about that search?
The first books I know, I specifically targeted Rose Metal Press for the Flash Field Guide because I knew their work and I knew what they had published. I sent them a proposal, and they said, they said, we'd love to do this, but you have to write a better proposal for us. So I went back to the drawing board and I redid my proposal the way they wanted it, and I said, yes, we'll do this. So that came very easily. Um, uh, so it's more the fiction that's taken time, and um, I was I targeted first. I tried to find an agent for the story collection, naively thinking at that point that you could find an agent for a story collection, and discovering no, you really have to have a novel, which I didn't have at the time. So I did find a really good small press, Press 53, which I liked, to publish that one. Then I did get an agent for the novel, and so I didn't have to submit that myself. So that does make a big difference. You have to still play the waiting game, and it's still very stressful, but having somebody else, um, do the work for you is very helpful.
Awesome, awesome. And then one more question before I let you go. What is coming next for you in your writing career?
Well, I took a break during COVID. It was too hard for me to really write then, but now sort of coming out of that daze. And so I'm actually hoping to have 3 manuscripts by the end of next year. I'm about halfway through a new story collection. I have enough flash fiction now, over 30, 40 years of publishing, to gather a collection together. And I am working on another World War II novel, this time set in the United States. So it takes a lot of research, though, when you do historical fiction. It takes time.
Right, but it's definitely worth it for the final product.
Yes. I mean, I love it. I'd rather do the research almost than the writing, but I enjoy it.
Right. So anyway, our time is pretty much up. So again, I want to thank you, Tara, for joining us. For those
Well, thank you
watching,
so
be sure to stop by. Yeah. For those watching, be sure to stop by her booth at FloridaWritersBooks.com and check out her books. You can also check out her official website, Tara Masih. That's TARAMASIH.com. We'll also have more live interviews right here on Crowdcast, so you can check back later. And if you're interested in learning more about the Florida Writers Association, you can visit floridawriters.org. So thank you, Tara, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for your good questions. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Michael.